Beijing has declared it wants the South China Sea Code of Conduct signed by 2022, but many within ASEAN countries fear it could be used to legitimize China's belligerent behavior in the maritime region. A retired Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio has warned the Sea Code must not be used by the Chinese to violate territorial sovereignty in the troubled waters. The resource-rich Spratly Islands, within Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf, will be in spotlight at the next East Asia Summit, EASE, that Bangkok is hosting early November. Mr. Carpio said that the Sea Code needs to have written provisions stating without any ambiguity that the code does not supplant or supersede the UNCLOS United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea in any way. The code should not be used to legitimize claims or activities that are otherwise illegal under international law. The code should not be a vehicle to allow China to recover what it had already lost under the arbitral ruling in the South China Sea arbitration of The Hague. Mr. Carpio announced this in a speech at the ADR Strat-based Forum on the South China Sea Code on Monday, October 28. Leaders of Southeast Asian states are scheduled to meet for the 35th ASEAN Summit in Thailand from October 31st to November 4th. Mr. Carpio added that the most pressing problem in ASEAN today did not involve member states against one another but the territorial and maritime dispute that had half of its member states against China. These include the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei, who all possess claims in the South China Sea. Mr. Carpio said, while the Spratly's dispute also involves overlapping territorial claims among the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei, these ASEAN member states have an informal understanding to maintain the status quo in the Spratly's. China refuses to respect this status quo in the Spratly's and has been aggressively intimidating claimant states, notably the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia, through acts of intimidation exercised by paramilitary vessels and forces under the direction of the Chinese military. This news comes as the U.S. are once again squabbling over the South China Sea after a Washington diplomat questioned Beijing's sincerity and plans to agree a code of conduct as Xi Jinping withdraws vessel from Vietnamese waters. Fears of armed conflict have been sparked by Chinese President Xi Jinping and his country's aggressive movements in the contested waters of the South China Sea. Beijing is trying to patch up deteriorating relations in the region by agreeing a code of conduct with its neighbors. However, a Tapas diplomat this month expressed skepticism about China's sincerity in negotiating a code of conduct with other claimants. David R. Stilwell said China's ruling Communist Party is pursuing a repressive alternative vision for the region that seeks to reorder it in its favor and has put Beijing in a position of strategic competition with all who seek to preserve a free and open order of sovereign nations within a rule-based order. Stillwell added that a code of conduct would be harmful to the region and freedom of the seas if China uses it to legitimize its egregious behavior and unlawful maritime claims. This comes after Xi Jinping's administration unleashed on Washington in multiple defiant statements in Beijing last week. General Wei Feng said we will not relinquish a single inch of territory passed down from our forefathers and also indirectly accused Washington of interfering with other countries' affairs. The foreign ministry in Beijing also waded into the disputes with Washington, saying on Friday that the U.S. should focus on its own domestic problems such as gun violence rather than condemning Beijing after US Vice President Mike Pence made a speech this week that was critical of the rival superpower. Pence last Thursday accused China of curtailing rights and liberties in Hong Kong and blasted US company Nike and the National Basketball Association for falling in line with Beijing in a disagreement over free speech. Pence also joined Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in condemning Beijing's treatment of Uyghur Muslims, stating that in Xinjiang, the Communist Party has imprisoned more than 1 million Chinese Muslims, including Uyghurs, in internment camps, where they endure around-the-clock brainwashing.